Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us. It takes a bold spirit to insert a budget discussion between a hardworking group of people in their weekend, but under Jan's leadership, NPW certainly has that boldness of spirit. So thank you for joining us. Jan will be introducing each of the legislators individually in just a minute, but I want to thank you all collectively for being here today. We at MPW feel very fortunate to have a state delegation that understands the issues and challenges that we are all facing as a community and a sector, which of course begs the question, why have a forum like this if we are all on the same page, so to speak? And I think we feel that having the same values and goals is not the same as engaging in substantive discussion to address what we see as needed enhancements to specific policies, programs, and priorities. And so appreciate your being here to have that substantive discussion. And we hope that today's conversation will lay the groundwork for action on some of these important issues and reaffirm our commitment to all of you that we and our members will work collaboratively with you to advance those efforts and proposals. So again, thank you to everyone, and I will turn it over to our indomitable leader, Jan.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. It is with gratitude for our partnership with all of you, our esteemed members of the New York State Assembly and Senate, that I welcome you to Nonprofit Westchester's Budget Forum. Thank you for attending, and thank you for your accessibility. Thank you to all the members of your staff who we work with to make this forum possible. And thank you to Amy Rivera and Suzanne Gardos on my staff for making this happen. I want to mention that I attended most of the Senate budget hearing yesterday and the last Assembly budget hearing, and saw the passion and concern in your faces as members of the nonprofit sector and human rights activists testified. It was an emotionally palpable experience for me, and I thank you. As Anna Haita said, my name is Jan Fisher, and I am the Executive Director of Nonprofit Westchester. More than 300 diverse members strong and growing, NPW is the county's only membership organization solely dedicated to advocating for the needs of the nonprofit sector, the people we serve, and the nonprofit workforce. I want to welcome those legislators that indicated they were attending today, because I think regardless of whether they make it here or not, that is their intention. Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who we welcomed a couple of weeks ago and had 150 people in attendance. Head of the Westchester Assembly Delegation, Gary Pretlow, Assemblywoman Amy Paulin, Assemblyman Nader Sage, Assemblyman Steve Otis, Assemblyman Tom Ambidanti, Assemblyman Chris Burdick, Assemblywoman Sandra Galiff, Senator Alessandra Biaggi, Senator Shelley Mayer, who will be joining us later, and Senator Pete Harkham. Here is how today is going to work. Our members will share some key issues of concern, and we will call on legislators to respond. At the end of this conversation, each legislator will have time to address the audience on their priorities. We ask everyone in the audience to please mute themselves. Legislators will be spotlighted on the screen when they speak. Please put any questions in the chat and we will try to get answers to them. This will be recorded and we will send it to our legislators as well. I'm going to open with an overarching need for the nonprofit sector and then go to our speakers. The nonprofit sector employs 20% of New York State's workforce. During the pandemic, our agencies stayed open, our workforce showed up, often putting themselves in harm's way. And our organizations continue to partner with government to deliver state-mandated, essential, and other critical services. Economic relief programs for nonprofits like the PPP were hard fought for us and helped nonprofit agencies to operate, to turn on the lights, to answer the calls, to purchase PPE, and to function. These opportunities are no longer available, but the need is still there. Data derived from a recent survey with NPW, Nonprofit New York, and NICON indicates that our agencies need operational support to address expenses that all businesses incur that increase due to the pandemic and have even greater impact for our nonprofits due to systemic underfunding, what are often poverty wages for direct care professionals, and inequitable contracting. We ask our elected officials to utilize ARPA funds to provide a grant program similar to that offered to small businesses to compensate for increased nonprofit operational expenses from the pandemic. I do have more written, but I'm not going to say it because I would like at this point to open up the forum and invite Theo Oshiro and Gerandi Martinez to talk about issues impacting the immigrant community.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your time. I'm Gerandi Martinez with the Community Resource Center in Mamaroneck. And as you know, or maybe those of you who don't know, the Excluded Workers Fund that was passed last year in New York, the first of its kind, served just over 130,000 New York workers. This historic program directly shaped our community's ability to survive and recover from the pandemic because so many lost work during the COVID crisis and went into debt to put food on the table and cover their bills and medical needs. This fund not only helped pay down their debts, but it also shaped regional economies as these communities invested directly back into small businesses locally. That's $122 million in the lower Hudson Valley alone from just 6% of the beneficiaries. However, we know that there were significant challenges that left tens of thousands of workers out after only 8 weeks after opening the applications. This meant 75,000 applicants were denied due to insufficient funds, meaning that $2.1 billion originally allocated for this fund would not support all of the eligible workers in New York State. We are calling for the state to replenish Excluded Workers Fund with $3 billion in next year's budget. This would help us serve 170,000 more workers, including the 75,000 that were denied due to insufficient funds. 10% of this $3 billion would be reserved for administration, including renewed grants to community-based organizations like ours so that we can provide application assistance. With smarter implementation plans, we can get closer to geographic equity and serve another 13,000 in the lower Hudson Valley alone. Let us not forget the hundreds of local workers who survived the pandemic and lost everything during Hurricane Ida, including their homes and documents. Let us not forget the hundreds of domestic violence victims who were forced to stay in abusive relationships because of their lack of financial security. The state is experiencing a surge in revenue, and so it's no time to pull back. There is enough incoming revenue in New York State for us to ensure that everyone, including excluded workers, can take part of economic recovery.
Thanks, Gerandi. And I just want to thank, Gerandi was an amazing partner in this Fund for Excluded Worker campaign this past year and continues to be alongside many of the other nonprofits here today. So really appreciate your support. And many of the legislators here also fought hard and supported this crucial legislation for our people. So thank you so much. And we're here to say we need your leadership again, right? As Gerandi was just saying, these communities are still suffering, still in great need because of this pandemic that, of course, is an ongoing public health crisis. And so, we're the folks that Make the Road New York works with, where I'm co-executive director, are many of the same folks that Gerandi works with, right, at the Community Resource Center. They're folks that are essential workers that have been crucial throughout the pandemic, and before and after the pandemic will continue to be crucial workers. What we're also asking for, in addition to the the replenishment that Gerandi was just talking about is also to not look at this really as just one-shot support, right? We know that this community has been forgotten for too long, and our Excluded No More legislation establishes what really would be a permanent solution in the form of unemployment insurance for these excluded workers. It would ensure that when the next crisis hits, that we as a state are ready to help these essential workers. We have the bill numbers here, A9037 and S8165, sponsored by Assembly Member Reyes and Senator Ramos. And this would essentially provide benefits to undocumented workers earning less than $56,000. It would also cover workers paid off the books by very small employers, as well as self-employed workers. This would really be structured as a type of unemployment program, right? An unemployment insurance program, and provide really that safety net for these crucial workers. So we're here to ask your leadership and support again by signing on to Excluded No More legislation, and to support the inclusion of $3 billion more in the Excluded Workers Fund. I will also say that another crucial piece of all of this has been the ways in which our state has a huge gap in healthcare coverage for these same workers, right? Many of which had to go throughout the pandemic, before the pandemic as well, without health insurance and access to care. We are working at Make the Road on coverage for all legislation, sponsored by Senator Rivera and Assemblymember Gottfried. And what this would do is provide essential coverage, right, via this and the essential plan, which already exists in the state, using that as a mechanism to provide coverage to folks, regardless of immigration status, who make up to 200% of the federal poverty level. So just imagine what kind of impact and how that would feel to an immigrant family who has never really had access to care. Maybe they've been able to access some of the crucial resources that we have in the county every now and again, but imagine the level of care that they'll be able to get if they have health insurance, preventative care, care for chronic illnesses, et cetera. And during a pandemic, I think we can all agree that it's something that is good for immigrant families and good for our state in general, for everyone to be insured. So I'll leave it there. I really appreciate, Jan, the opportunity to be here and speak in this important venue.
So I'm going to randomly call upon Assemblyman Burdick if you have any comments or questions on this particular issue that Gerandi and Theo brought up in terms of the excluded workers funds and the other issues involving health insurance for immigrants in our community. You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, I think I'm first of all, I want to thank all of you for the tremendous work that you're doing, and I work closely actually with Make the Road. I am joining my colleague, Assemblymember Reyes, in calling upon the Speaker to add to the One House Bill $3 billion to replenish the Excluded Worker Fund. I think that the description and the success of the program are all very.
So we seem to be having some technical difficulties there. So I think what I'd like to do is jump to Assemblyman Otis on this.
Thank you for Community Resource Center, Gerandi and Theo for Make the Road. This was a major issue last year, and we got a good outcome and got resources to people who have been going without during COVID. And so there is legislation now to create a permanent system and ideally I think the funding stream has to be figured out, because the way to make this last as a permanent new program is to have a funding stream and a source of revenue that feeds it. Unemployment insurance is paid for through a calculation via employers. And I think on this, the issues are going to be, what's the right formula to make something happen? And is there room in the state budget to do something to get it started? And but I support this initiative to make it happen. And I think that people that are living here and have lived here for a long time and they're working, they should be eligible for unemployment insurance. And I would say that the federal government, in a different category of individuals during COVID, created for people that are independent contractors, other kind of categories of people that were not eligible for unemployment insurance. The federal government created the PUA program. Specifically, they realized here are people that don't qualify for unemployment insurance, and they did something nationwide, but they didn't include excluded workers. And so New York State did. And when we did that last year, we did it with no federal dollars, all state dollars to make that program work. So thank you for the presentation. And Chris Burdick and I are it's good I got to pick up after him, because we share the same position on the issue and talk often.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move along, and we'll have more opportunity for each legislator at the end to express any point of view they want, but I want to introduce now Carla Horton from Hope's Door to bring up a very important issue as well. Carla, you there? There you go. You're there.
I am.
Okay.
And I have way too many screens, so just give me a second.
Do you want me to go to the next question and come back to you?
Yes, please do. I have two screens and they're not cooperating. Thank you.
Stephanie Marcasano from the Harris Project, you are up.
Thank you so much. So I've got my screens open, one computer. So thank you so much, Jan and Nonprofit Westchester. Good afternoon. I am Stephanie Marcasano, founder and president of the Harris Project. I live in Ardsley, New York, and my 19-year-old son, Harris, had co-occurring disorders, the combination of one or more mental health challenges and substance misuse, and he died by accidental overdose in 2013. First, I'd like to thank the leader, although I'm not sure she's here, for appointing me to the New York State Opioid Settlement Board and the New York State Association of Counties for nominating me. I'd also like to acknowledge the efforts of Senator Pete Harkham and Bill co-sponsors to create a single Office of Mental Health and Addiction in Bill 5084C, which is moved out of committee. However, as we look for innovative opportunities to turn the tide on overdose, suicide, and alcohol-related deaths, I fear that there is a loss of momentum due to a lack of interest on the part of the New York State Assembly to support this. Assemblymember Anna Kellis has the same as bill in 8379, yet there are no Assembly co-sponsors. Meanwhile, we see in Westchester County how integrated prevention programming like CODA, co-occurring disorders awareness, is making real impact. And our introduction of Encompass, the evidence-based treatment modality for teens and transitional age youth with co-occurring disorders, has created opportunities not seen before. Yet even though these agencies hold OMH licenses, OASIS licenses, both licenses, and some even have integrated licenses, our funding came from WMC Health, Montefiore, and most recently, the Westchester Community Foundation. We were funded by WCF to certify 20 Encompass clinicians, yet we have requests for 44 from 8 of our agencies right here in Westchester. We would also like to be able to support Inclure, a pro-social, non-substance using activity platform.
Joe.
Jan, I think somebody's not muted. As we know, there are many barriers in the current siloed system, including separate funding streams, a lack of integrated RFPs, to name just two. Even with a highly committed county executive in George Latimer and Commissioner Michael Orth from the Department of Community Mental Health, with no OASIS or OMH funding, projects like CODA and Encompass are simply not going to be sustainable, let alone grow. Meanwhile, I get requests to bring our work to counties across the state. Particularly for our Assembly Westchester delegation, I ask that you consider co-sponsoring Assembly Bill 8379 in honor of my son and support of all of who would have a real chance to reach their full potential if they had access to an integrated system of care to meet their needs. I invite you to sit with us, the members of the Westchester County Department of Community Mental Health Co-occurring System of Care Committee, to learn more. I'd also like to take this opportunity to ask Senator Mayer, as the chair of the New York State Senate Education Committee, and Assembly members Otis, Paulin, and Sayegh to consider sponsoring a bill to amend state education law so that all schools shall include, as an integral part of their health education in grades 6 through 12, instruction regarding the prevention of co-occurring disorders as a bridge between the units on mental health and substance misuse and addiction. Thank you.
I'm going to, thank you, Stephanie. I'm going to call on Senator Shelley Mayer for a response to that, if you would, and then Assemblyman Gary Pretlow to a response to what Stephanie has said overall. And I forget the bill number, Stephanie, but if you could, repeat that in the chat for all to see the bill number, that would be great. So Senator Mayor, so happy to have you here, and
thank you. Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Stephanie, for that really, succinct presentation, and thank you for your incredible leadership on this issue. I appreciate the suggestion of a particular bill that directs curriculum on these issues in the health curriculum. I don't think it's any secret to anyone on this call that the legislature has had challenges imposing any curriculum requirements at all on any one of a number of issues. And I think we have about 50 curriculum bills referenced to our committee. That being said, what we are trying to do is a few things. One, push the state education department to be more aggressive in encouraging, if not forcing, schools to adopt certain curriculum when they teach about health. Two, encouraging school districts to be more forward thinking. And three, when push comes to shove, legislating that certain curriculum must be followed. So we're very open to the conversation of how best to achieve the goal that you described, Stephanie, whether it's a bill to require a particular curriculum. Again, not that I would oppose it, but in all honesty, we are having trouble moving bills that tell schools what to teach. And that has been a problem for many years because of the institutional tension between the state education department and the legislature. I think the Senate is quite willing to buck that trend and begin to tell the state education department and school districts what to do. And so to that end, I'm happy to talk to you in greater specifics about how to move forward on this issue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Assemblyman Pretlow, do you have anything you'd like to share in response to this?
Just a few comments. First of all, Stephanie, thank you for your presentation, and my condolences on the loss of your son. As the senator just mentioned or just said, it is extremely difficult for us to change curriculum because every school district likes to feel that it's totally independent, and they try and get in state ed to get every school district, or I think there's 700 school districts, Shelley, I'm not sure, but somewhere around there, 700 school districts to do the same thing is extremely difficult. And unfortunately, I call it unfortunate, our education system has gone away from everything other than reading, writing, and arithmetic. A lot of the things that were taught in the past from civics on up are no longer being taught in our schools, and we can't even get the public schools to teach what basic history is, so it's really a difficult process for us, but we are trying. The opioid problem in this country has been exacerbated by COVID. And a lot of people have drifted off to the use of drugs, maybe as a what's the word I'm looking for, as a backdrop or a fallback place, and that's not good. We're working hard to alleviate that, to try to stop the addiction. We have many programs in place now, but it always boils down to money and what it would cost. I personally don't think that there's much of an expense in a curriculum change. It could be 2 periods a week or 1 period a day. I'm not sure. I personally don't think that young people are in school long enough now to get the education that they really need. But that's something that's between the teachers unions and other entities. But I will work toward this bill that you mentioned. I think it's 8379. I have not read it. You have to understand that we get over 10,000 bills a year. It's almost impossible to read all of them. I generally only read the bills that people bring to my attention, because I'll get a stack of introduced bills every day. I just can't keep up. I have 2,000 emails unanswered right now on my email account. It's just pretty difficult for one person to do everything. But I will say that myself, I won't speak for my colleagues, but I'm pretty sure that they're in agreement that we'll do all we can to fix this problem.
Great. And you just gave us an important tip on actually bringing the bills to the legislators' desks. So thank you for that.
Jen, I just wanted to ask, just something to think about. Assembly member Phil Steck, who chairs the Substance Use Committee, recently wrote an opinion piece in the Times Union on January 24th. He told me at the last hearing that I was at that he agrees with everything we say on a single agency, except the creation of a single agency. I would direct you, and perhaps I could email you a copy of that opinion piece, and that would really be the jumping off point for our dialogue with our Westchester County providers and all of the work we're doing around integration, because we are focused on the evidence and on the need. So thank you.
We're going to go, thank you. We're going to go now to Carla Horton, and I would ask that Senator Biaggi, I know you have to run, if you could respond to what Carla is bringing up, along with Senator Harkham to respond to what Carla Horton is about to discuss. Carla?
Thank you very much. As you may have heard by now, domestic violence and sexual assault providers, among others, are facing massive funding cuts at October 1, 2022. This will have a devastating impact, not just on Hope Store, but also on the Pace Women's Justice Center, My Sister's Place, Legal Services of the Hudson Valley, Victims Assistance Services at West Cobb, the Office for Women, and the Office of the District Attorney, among others. These are just the ones that I've been able to pull together as a group we formed to highlight what our concerns are. And so I'm kind of standing here representing all of these folks. To be specific, the New York State Office of Victim Services informed us providers that due to significant declines in federal funding coming into New York, awards that will be issued for October 22 will be slashed an estimated 10 to 15%. Now, since Westchester County providers receive over $8 million annually through the Office of Victim Services, that is an anticipated cut of anywhere from $800,000 to $1.2 million. Now, let's just get personal for a minute. Hope Store's share of that loss alone is estimated to be $127,000 to $190,000. But even more chilling, OVS canceled the last year of existing legal services contracts that should not expire until September 30, 2023. They're going to end at September 30, 2022. That's at least 1.6 million or more for our local agencies and $403,026 for Hope Store alone. If not replaced, I will be forced to close the Hope Store Legal Center. My center has helped secure over 150 some orders of protection, custody support orders, supervised visitation, working with PACE. We've initiated divorces. We're doing everything people say we should to help survivors who are told to leave. Leave and go where? They can't leave and go somewhere without putting themselves in danger, without the expert legal help, counseling and support groups and shelter, all the different things that we do, and all the bad things that are, facing Hope Store are being faced by my sister agencies as well. And not only are these cuts a devastating blow, but they come at a time of such vastly increased demand. Hope Store had an 89% increase in caseload last year, 89%. PACE 21%. My sister's place 41%. Legal services and victims assistance services both up 38%. This cannot stand. So we've called upon Governor Hochul and asked for your help to get her to add a 30-day amendment to her executive budget to maintain level funding for all the OVS funded providers for the next 2 years. It's projected to cost $25 million per year. I do have to say, though, that amount does need to be verified by OVS. If, for the most horrible or whatever of reasons, the governor is not prevailed upon to do that, we ask that you, our representatives in the Assembly and the State Senate, negotiate for the needed funding in your one House bills. I do want you to know that this is not expected to be a long problem, not a long-term one. The Federal Crime Victims Fund, which fuels those OVS grants that we all get, is expected to be replenished in the next 2 to 3 years. That's thanks to what we call VOCA fix legislation that President Biden signed into law last summer. And since he did that, more than $350 million has been deposited into the fund. And that is a very positive sign that the VOCA fix legislation will achieve its goal. However, it will take some time for the fund to restore to previous levels. So an increasing number of states are taking action to bridge this temporary gap in funding, and they're no better than we are. California, for example, set aside an allocation of $100 million to fund their gap. We're asking New York to do the same, and we believe you can do that $25 million a year using state surplus funds or ARPA funding. We ask the governor and you, our elected representatives, to do everything you can to keep us whole so we may help survivors heal and keep victims safe and alive.
Thank you, Carla. I want to acknowledge Fran Barrett from the governor's office, the liaison to the nonprofit sector. Thank you so much for the conversations we have had on these and other issues. And I would like to call on first Senator Biaggi for a response, and then Senator Harkham. And I think I would like to also invite Assemblywoman Paulin to comment on this. So those three in that order would be great. And we have 2 other issues to address, so I'm sorry if I cut anyone off, but please, Senator Biaggi.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you to all of you who are here today to share with us all of your priorities. I think it might go without saying, or it might be assumed, but I want to make sure that the point is driven home that, frankly, all of the things that have already been shared by all of the speakers, from the Excluded Workers Fund to Coverage for All to housing access voucher programs, Good Cause, the Stop Violence in the Sex Trades Act, and on, universal childcare, are things that not only I support, but you can count on my voice for. So I just want to be very clear about my commitment. That's number 1. Number 2, I want to respond directly to you, Carla, and what you're referring to and discussing with regard to the cut in funding for OVS. You can count on me to make this a priority. When I say make this a priority, what I mean is to bridge the gap and do what we can in our one house budget to use my voice to speak up about this. It is one of the most important priorities to me as a legislator and as a human being, whether or not I'm here, to make sure that we are providing the right amount of services for victims of crimes specifically and importantly, because when we talk about the rise in crime, it seems that we often leave out those who are unfortunately on the other side of sexual assault or rape or sexual violence. And so it is important to me. It is something that I know I'm not alone in prioritizing, but I am committed to making sure that we can provide as much funding as necessary, because we know that during the last 2 years, that not only has domestic violence gone up, even if it has been underreported because people have been and were stuck home with the people who were abusing them, but also it's important that we are holistic in our approach to the rise in crime and always include those who are the victims of sexual violence. So you can count on me for that. And if there are other ways in which I can help, please let me know. I will put in the chat my email. You can email me directly. And this really goes for everyone who's here today. I'm happy to talk through these things. My team is happy to help and really support, frankly, all of the things that you're talking about. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you. Senator Harkham.
Thank you very much, Jan, and thank you for hosting the forum. You know, it's great to know that you do have a delegation that cares about these issues. But as was said at the beginning, you know, it's important that we speak face to face to discuss the specific. The devil is always in the details for all of these things. Carla, thank you. You've been a great friend and advisor over the years. You know, we're getting to a place in Westchester where, you know, over the last 10 years, we've been building capacity. And this is kind of a gut blow, you know, that the federal government turns off the spigot and then the state shuts off the spigot. So just very simple answer to support what my colleague, Senator Biaggi said. We will be advocating for this in the one house if it's not put in the 30-day amendment. We'll know that, I think, next Thursday is when that comes out. But you know, I too will be pushing ardently to have you know, what we're doing is we're backfilling funding essentially for the federal government. But it's so critical, this funding, and we're happy to support.
Thank you very much, Pete.
Assemblywoman Paulin.
Yes, of course. Carla, first, thank you for your leadership. And I appreciate the information a great deal. I will absolutely follow up. My email is easy, so I'm not gonna even put it in the chat. If you don't have it, it's amypaulin@gmail. That's my personal email. And I know Niskative had reached out to me, but I didn't have the specifics. So whatever you have, it would, you know, the timing is really critical. You know, on the assembly side, we like to, you know, we've been asked to get all of our requests in by the end of next week. So I just want to see if anybody's doing a letter on this, what's happening, and I will.
I understand that Assemblymember Rosenthal is doing a letter, but I'm a little locally focused. I'd really appreciate if someone from the Westchester delegation, because we are really stepping out front statewide on this. I'd appreciate if somebody here did that. And Jan, in advance of this meeting, I sent you my document with my statement and the backup figures. If you would just send that to all of the elected officials.
Will do.
And that way, anyone who we might miss otherwise, but I know you have the complete list. If you would be so kind, I would be grateful.
Do that. I want to call attention to Assemblyman Burdick, who said he is joining Assemblymember Rosenthal in the sign-in letter.
I just sent my staff a note to do the same thing, but I will, and I know that everyone feels very strong about it. So, but I'll make sure that I take the onus on myself and find out what's going on and get back to our delegation.
I actually think didn't Gary Pretlow just circulate a letter this morning?
Yes, I did.
Well, thank you very much. I hadn't heard.
Yeah, I put a letter in today. It should have been distributed to all of the assembly
Oh,
members.
thank you,
because
sir. Thank
Oh,
you.
good.
I did that because between the 109 of us on this call, I don't go in Rosenthal letters. So that's a personal thing, okay? So
All right, Gary, Senator, I have to be
You're gonna-
honest. I heard that. And that's why I made a personal request of this delegation. So thank you for stepping in.
So we are going to, thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to Seth Diamond from WJCS, and then I will ask Assemblyman Burdick to come back on and respond, Assemblyman Abenanti and Assemblywoman Galiff, who also joined us. So now, Seth, you have the floor, and after that, we will have Kathy Hallis from the Child Care Council as well.
Great, thank you, Jan, and welcome to all our delegation, and thank you for all your hard work and for joining us today, the end of what I know is a long week, and I'm sure many events yet to come today and this weekend. I'm the CEO of Westchester Jewish Community Services, and among the work that we do is group homes. And as Jan said at the beginning, all nonprofits have been under tremendous stress during the pandemic, but group home work, I think it is fair to say, has been under the most stress. That work can't be done remotely, must be done in person. The staff had to deal with all the unknowns and difficulties and health concerns that we all had. They had to come to work and continue to support our residents, and they did magnificently well. Many of you I know were involved in recognizing that work. Senator Mayer was visiting our homes and delivering meals, and many of you offered congratulations and support to them during the past 2 years, which was tremendously meaningful to those workers because they often felt like while healthcare workers in hospitals were recognized for their sacrifice, those in the group homes who were doing work every bit as risky and difficult were not recognized. So I thank you for all that recognition. At the end of the day, one of the key forms of recognition is, of course, salary. And the rate that the state pays agencies like ours to do group home work allows us to only pay slightly over the minimum wage for group home workers. I think we would all agree that at any point in time that is woefully inadequate, and particularly that has been highlighted over these past 2 years. We in Westchester have a particular issue. The way the state calculates the rates is that they put agencies in groups and look at a region, and we are grouped with counties to the north of us, and so their costs are lower. And so our rate, rather than being grouped with sort of agencies in the city, which might allow our rate to be somewhat higher and allow us to pay a little more, is lower than it should have been. But I think the real solution is to establish a minimum wage for group home workers. That's been done for other titles. It was done for fast food workers at one point and other areas throughout the state. But this valuable work needs to be valued with our state resources and our state dollars. And we should have a solid minimum wage that's well above a minimum salary for group home workers that's well above the minimum wage, that allows them to have dignity in their work and allows us to recruit and retain these dedicated workers so we can provide the services we need to individuals with developmental disabilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Seth. So I'm going to call on Assembly members Abenanti, Burdick, and Galiff. We still have a question left from Kathy Hallis, and then with the time remaining, we will have our legislators each have a turn to address this group. So Assemblyman Abenanti, you're up.
First of all, Jan, nice to see you again. Nice to see
you.
all of you. I'm looking forward to seeing you without that little square box around you and seeing you in person. As you all know, and so thank you all for attending today, and thank you for hosting this. It gives us a chance to talk to each other again and understand what's happening in the different sectors of our community and understand what we're trying to do to be helpful. As you know, I'm the chairman of the Committee on People with Disabilities. And I have been working in this area for a long, long time, but as chair, I've been working around the clock for the last year. It's been difficult because of the pandemic, but the problems in the area of dealing with people with disabilities have been around for a long, long time and were made worse by the previous governor. Every time we looked around, we were pushing back against another cut. Fortunately, the new governor has brought a new approach. She's put out a budget that puts money in most of the right places, just not enough money. So I compliment her on understanding the problem. Now we've got to push a little bit harder to get more money in the right places. As you also know, I'm a member of the disability community. So I see the issues personally, and I also hear them daily from my friends, my son's friends. I have a 22-year-old son with autism, and he is living at home. The services are minimal that we can access, one, before the pandemic, and two, now, especially during the pandemic. The issue of group homes is part of a larger issue of how do we find housing for all of the people who need appropriate housing. Group homes are one piece of it. I'm working with groups from all over the state, parents from all over the state, trying to devise innovative ways of providing housing. OPWDD up until now has been standing in the way. I think we've got their attention. I'm working on some legislation right now to come up with different ways of providing housing to ease the pressure that we have on our group homes. The existing workers are under a significant amount of pressure. There is a 25% vacancy rate in the OPWDD world. 25% of the workers that used to be there are no longer there. And so agencies have to move people from day programs to group homes. And many of the people who worked in group homes were leaving. That problem comes about, I think, from many sources. Number one, the pool of people who are available to work in this area has gotten much smaller. And we've got to find a way to increase that pool. And I want to talk to my friends over in the immigration community, because I believe that we could possibly find a way to increase the number of people working in human services if we could just change the immigration laws and allow people who are in this country to work and not have to worry about looking over their shoulder to see who's gonna deport them. But also the problem of what we're paying people. These people who are working in this field are doing God's work, but the wages are sinful. We don't need a minimum wage. We need a living wage. And that has to be based on a rational regional cost of living. The gentleman who spoke, Seth, I've worked with WJCS for many years. Yes, Jan used to be there. And my son wears a wrist bracelet that comes from WJCS. But we need to find a way to increase pay. The governor has put in the budget what could amount to a $3,000 one-time bonus. That's what it's being sold at. It's basically a combination of federal funds and state funds. There's no guarantee it's even going to be $3,000. But if you have somebody who's making at minimum wage, $3,000 doesn't even get them to what McDonald's is paying. People who are, the governor has put in a 5% cost of living increase. 5% on $15 an hour is 75 cents an hour. That's certainly not enough money. I have been pushing I'm going to be instructing the Assembly budget staff to include in my budget letter a significant increase in state funding. There's some talk of $500 million. That's a number that's being floated. I know Senator Mannion from who's my counterpart in the Senate is talking about that number. I think we've got to look and see what the correct number is, but we need a lot more permanent money, not just a one-shot bonus. We've got to have permanent money. And like I said, make this a living wage, not a minimum wage, because it's not a minimum wage job. I'm aware of the problems that they've had. I've fought very hard on behalf of the group homes and the other residences under OPWDD and the other facilities under OPWDD. I remember the previous governor, we had a fight with him to get PPE into those locations. And I'm proud of the fact that we've managed to get vaccinations into them. I think it's like 90% vaccination rate. But everything we do for the OPWDD clients is a fight. So this is going to be a fight, but I think we have a governor who's listening, paying attention, and is going to have to figure out where she can get the money to be helpful here. But if we all work together on this, I think we can make a significant change here. Seth, thank you for bringing forward all of that information. I look forward to working with you over the next few weeks to see what we can get into the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Avenatti. And if I wasn't, I'm sorry, Mr. Avenatti, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I didn't mean a minimum wage at the state minimum wage. I meant a minimum wage above the wage, but a minimum level of pay that is, you're right, a living wage, but a state declared one that would, all the budget information, all the budget appropriations, et cetera, would then flow and have to meet that to be able to make sure all agencies could pay that.
By the way, Seth, this problem of an insufficient regional cost of living is not unique to our field, to the disability field. We have a similar problem in the education field and in some other places. We're grouped in with the upstate areas that have far lower cost of living. We should be in with New York City.
Yeah, that alone would make a big difference.
Thank you both. I do want to call on Assemblyman Burdick and Assemblywoman Galiff. Then we're going to go to Kathy Hallis from the Child Care Council. But I do want to also, since we're having a discussion on this, do want to add that there is legislation out there, Fair Pay for Home Care, the Fair Pay for Home Care Act. And I asked our Assembly and Senate members to please look for that. It's Senate 5374A, and it is Assembly A6329A. Okay, Assemblyman Burdick, sorry you got cut off before, but would you like to add anything in here?
Well, thanks very much, Jan, and thank you, Seth. And Seth, you're so right in the issues that we have with this. And I serve on Tom's committee for people with disabilities. And in the budget hearings, in all of the hearings that we've held, we hear time and again, and I hear from an advisory committee that I've put together about the tremendous problem of the loss of people working in this area where they can do better by working for McDonald's. And this just is totally unsustainable, and it creates chaos and such distress for the caregivers, for and all those in this area. And thank you, Jan, for mentioning the Fair Pay for Home Care bill. I'm a co-sponsor of that. And to the extent that that does not extend to group homes or other areas where we need this, the legislature needs to do so. I agree that we have a far better and more constructive and more collaborative relationship between the executive and the legislature. We also start out in a better position financially than a year ago. And so I do think that we have opportunities that we might not have had a year ago. I think you're also hearing in what virtually everyone, in fact, every one of the legislators have said, in the very strong and ardent and vocal support for actually everything that has been mentioned today. And, you know, you can count on that continuing throughout the budget process, because we need to support everything that you are doing. Thanks again for offering this forum and the opportunity for us to hear from you folks directly.
Thank you so much. I do want to mention, I want to acknowledge again, Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins for joining us, County Legislator Vedat Gashi, and County Legislator Mary Jane Shimsky. It means a lot when our county legislators come in and join the state legislators. So we're going to have Assemblywoman Galiff give comments on this, and then we're going to go to Kathy Hallis to talk about childcare. So.
And I apologize for being late, but the county executive was in Ossining at the Ossining Volunteer Ambulance Corps, along with the Scarsdale Ambulance Corps, to give them kudos for all of the work that they've done through COVID. So anyway, so that's where I've been. I'm sorry, I wasn't on in the beginning. I just like to say that my colleague, Tom Abenanti, is the greatest leader on the issues that Seth has raised that I've ever seen in the assembly since I've been there. And we've had some good leaders before, but we've never had anybody like Tom. And so if anything can get done in this area, he's going to be able to get it done. And I know Chris is also not a sidekick, but a colleague trying to do the same thing. So, but I wanted to find out, yes, I know we're all working and I'm supportive of fair pay for home care and also for group homes. But Seth, do you have any idea what the amount of money would be? Are we talking, I mean, to be realistic, if we were at $20 an hour, what does that do? If we raise that, how, you know, do you have any kind of numbers that we should be talking about?
Yeah, I don't have statewide numbers. I know how much it would be for us. For example, for our agency, which we have about 100 residents and close to 200 group home workers. Each dollar of increase is about a $240,000 budget item. So to bring it up $5 would be something over $1 million. We start at a little over $15 for workers who are just beginning and don't have any experience when they start with us. So it's an expensive item. I don't think there's any question. But as others have said, when you look at the retention issues, we pay over $1 million a year in overtime costs. Because our workers we don't have enough workers. You have to look at, as Mr. Abenati was saying, the care that's provided in the homes when you have workers who are working multiple shifts and stressed out and product of the trauma we all have been experiencing. And it's very, very difficult unless we have staff. The staff is incredibly dedicated. I don't think anybody has any question about that, and that's been shown over the past 2 years, but there's obviously a human limit to what they can do.
Thank you, Seth. I think as we all stress here, a budget is a reflection of a community's values, and certainly we don't want this budget or any budget to reflect the fact that we don't value the people that have put their lives on the line day in and day out over the past 2 years to provide services for all our family members. So with that, I'm going to go to Kathy Hallis. And after Kathy, I'm going to ask for one response, and then we will go to our elected officials to have them each say something. I ask you to be brief and we want to get every elected official in to have time. So Kathy, you're up, and Seth, thank you so much for what you had to say.
And thank you for all your support. Thank you.
Kathy.
Jan, thank you, and thanks to MPW, and greetings to all our elected officials. I always tell people we have the best elected officials statewide, hands down. Let me just start by saying, as someone else said, the road to economic recovery goes right through childcare. And never strong, the New York State childcare system is absolutely broken. The supply is not adequate, particularly for infants and toddlers. It is largely unaffordable for almost everybody. And the workforce, which showed up throughout the pandemic, is at the very bottom of the compensation ladder. The executive budget does contain some good news for childcare by raising the subsidy income eligibility to serve more children. And it funds a childcare workforce wage program. I don't know the details on that yet. And it provides for a subsidy rate increase in the fall, but it falls far short of the need. And until we get childcare right, I think we're going to continue to have a lot of very expensive problems with which to deal. So my question is, what will the legislature do to build on the steps in the executive budget to move New York State closer to a universal system of childcare? Thank you.
So Senator Mayer, would you like to jump in here? And then we'll move on to, we can move on to individual statements and comments.
I'd love to jump in because, you know, credit to Kathy and her colleagues around the state for building a movement that takes advantage of this moment of opportunity. As bad as COVID is, it's a moment of opportunity to drive home the message that we need childcare for everyone. Kathy's been singing this tune for the last 25 years, but now between this governor, what happened during COVID, the fact that our schools were intermittent providers of care, this is the moment to force the conversation for childcare, universal childcare. It's disappointing to me the governor did not put it in the budget. She did not really do much on this and on a few other issues where she had opportunity. I'm very hopeful that there's certainly a huge push in our conference, and I know in the assembly as well, to get this issue into our one houses. I don't know what it will look like, but I can tell you that I think the commitment from our members in the Senate Democratic majority and a vast majority in the Assembly majority are going to push to take advantage of the fact we have a surplus, we have the need, we have a broken system, and we have a statewide problem of the lack of childcare, particularly for infants and toddlers. So I am hopeful, keep the pressure up, Kathy, and thank you for your work on this.
Well, thank you, Senator Mayer. Thank you.
So we're going to jump into now allowing our elected officials to have a little time, probably a little less than we thought, because we are running behind. I do want to, there are other groups and organizations on this Zoom that are doing critical work. The importance of right to counsel, the importance of issues related to sickle cell disease, and Jacqueline Baker, who's become a strong advocate for that. Transit-oriented development and accessory dwelling units. We are supporting that. And just want to give a shout out to, all the providers. Our federally qualified health centers are here as well. And so many other, the arts are here. So many other really important issues, and we could never get to all of them. But please take care of our sector, because in addition to doing God's work, we are doing the work of the state. We are, we are professionals, we're trained, we are doing the work. And as I like to say, the nonprofit workforce is New York State's workforce. We, again, employ 20% of people statewide. So with that, I do want to get back to give our state legislators an opportunity, about a minute. I know that's hard. Assemblyman Pretlow, anything you would like to share with this audience? The stage is yours. If we have time, we can get to our county legislators, but I don't know that we will, but we'll certainly provide a platform for them during budget season and before. So Assemblyman Pretlow, please.
Thank you, Jan. And I just want to say that the work that all of you on this call do is laudable. It is one of the most important things that this state can provide. But we have to look at realities now. Everything that we're looking for costs money. And you have to understand how the budget process works. The governor presents us with a budget, which is a balanced budget. The Senate and the Assembly then individually put items that they hold as important in our one house budgets, and then negotiations begin. Last year, I think my number is correct, the Assembly requested over $70 billion of additional spending in last year's budget. We have to find a place. We have to find that money somewhere. We have to take from somewhere. Well, not that we're not going to do it. Just to exclude the workers fund, $3 billion, that has to come from somewhere. Last year, though we didn't have federal funds, since money is fungible, a lot of money came from the feds and we used it in other places and used our state resources for $2.5 billion for excluded workers fund, which I think is, very important to do. And we had to do it. I pledge that I will do everything I can to get as much as we can out of this budget for the nonprofit sector, because like you said, you're doing the state's work. People should not be paid a paltry amount. We pay our special needs schools way less than we pay public school teachers. We pay people that work in group homes way less than they should get. Our home care workers are making minimal amounts of money where they have to have 2 and 3 clients just to make ends meet. So we're working on all of these issues, and I'm sure we're going to get not all of it, but we're going to get some of it.
Great, thank you so much. I do want to acknowledge County Legislator Catherine Parker is on, and one group I did not mention is our institutions of higher education. They are members of NPW and we support their efforts as well. I'm going to call on now Senator Pete Harkham for his wrap-up comments.
Thank you so much, Jan, and thank you all for this forum. I've worked with a lot of you very closely back to my county ledge days. I really value the relationships. I value what you and your teams and your agencies do. And a lot of what we're hearing today is the result of 10 years of disinvestment, as I think Tom had mentioned, all across the human services sector, all of the O agencies, all of the work that you do. And it's catch-up time. And we have a governor who gets it, and we're beginning to make those investments. But the pandemic really showed us the fractures and the inequities and the lack of funding and the lack of investment. And so I know that we are committed as a delegation to do as much as we can to address these priorities. And Jan, I'm really glad you brought up affordable housing, because that is a crisis in New York State. Aside from having the most segregated suburbs in the country, people just cannot find affordable housing. They are housing burden. And so my ADU bill and the governor's ADU bill address that in a low impact way. And unfortunately, the response has been kind of hateful from the usual crowd. But we're grownups and we'll deal with that. And it's good policy. And we're going to continue to work with you to move New York forward. So thanks for doing this, and great to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm going to call on Assemblywoman Paula now for wrap-up comments.
Thanks, Jan, and thanks for organizing this. It's important sometimes in the high-paced Albany environment for us to even hear each other, and to clearly bring forth so many of the issues that we fundamentally absolutely need to expand and deal with. So we didn't each get to comment on each of them, but collectively, I can assure you we work very well together, and we will be pushing these to the extent, as Gary pointed out, that the money is available. So, Kathy, I'm just going to point to you because I know you're on this initiative. One thing that you all didn't mention that I just want to make you all aware of is another initiative that I think is critically important in light of the high Con Edison bills, the electric bills, and that is arrears. For many people, that will be a lifetime debt if we don't address arrears. And the only way for us to address the high cost for everyone is to put some state money in to supplement some of what the ratepayers are going to. So that's something that, as Corp's chair is on my agenda to look closely at. It helps the same people, and that we're all trying to help here on this Zoom today. So thank you. Domestic violence, childcare, affordable housing, all of it is critically important, and beefing up and helping the not-for-profits. I'm very proud to always work in alignment with that. Last year, we were successful in changing the requirements for posting, for filing your to the state. So it's always a pleasure to work alongside you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I would also like to acknowledge newly elected and in office now, County Legislator Jewel Williams Johnson, who has been on this Zoom from the beginning, but I guess your name isn't embedded in my brain yet because as all the other legislators are, but welcome to the county legislature, and we're happy to have you and thank you for being here. I'm going to call on Assemblyman Otis and then Senator Mayer for wrap-up comments.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you for all the good programs during the year that not-for-profit Westchester provides. It's a great venue for sharing information. We had the Westchester Assembly delegation had last week our budget hearing, and the Senate is having their Senate delegation having their budget hearing. So we actually got a lot of detail on some of the issues raised today that will supplement the conversation today. And as my colleagues have expressed, in the budget process, we are now going to come out with our one house proposals. There's going to be negotiation, and we're going to try and make progress on all of these issues. I think something of special note that you all have lived is running a not-for-profit in the 2 years of COVID. You've had trouble surviving. You've had trouble providing the services to the people who need it, and also keeping your operations afloat. And we at the state have been able to try to find ways to help with some of that, help with some of the grant funding and things in a difficult climate. We've been sensitive to that. You do so much, and we need you as a resource to identify these issues, but also the clients that you all serve need you. So just a thank you from all of us for the valuable role that you play in our county. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you. I'm going to now call on Assemblyman Burdick, then Assemblymember Abenanti, then Assemblymember Galef, and we can wrap this up. Assemblymember Burdick, you're on.
Thanks very much, Jan. And, I think that you put it very well when you said that a budget reflects the values of a community. And, certainly here, the Westchester delegation to the legislature is working very hard to support the incredible work that you folks are doing. And while mindful of Gary Pretlow's cautionary comments on the need for fiscal prudence, which I think we really do follow, we still will be advocating for increases in a number of areas already mentioned. I'd like to mention as well, to the extent not already mentioned, the Office for New Americans. Already mentioned was childcare. I'll add to that list pre-K. We've already mentioned trying to fill the gap left from the suspension of VOCA. I also want to mention legal services, including legal services of the Hudson Valley, Arts Westchester. And one thing I've been working on is transitional housing for individuals released from state correctional facilities. And I want to also mention that I've been working with Assemblymember Harvey Epstein, who serves with me on the Housing Committee, on the accessory dwelling unit legislation, and trying to address some of the concerns that have been raised, including by many of the elected officials in my own district. And I really am hopeful that we're going to be able to address those issues, come to a compromise, and be able to get it over the finish line. So thank you all so much in the private sector. You're the boots on the ground. You're the ones that are making so much happen, and we're here to support you.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to go to Assemblyman Abenanti and then Assemblymember Galef.
Once again, I want to thank all of you for coming together today, letting us have this conversation. A community is not just a place on a map. It's a combination of all of its different parts working together. And the not-for-profit sector in Westchester County is bringing all of those parts together. You guys are the heart of our Westchester community. You are pumping the life throughout that community that brings everyone together. So I want to say thank you to all of you for your efforts. And I want to thank you for raising and highlighting some issues today, which are among the many that we have to deal with over the next few weeks. We have a lot of work to do. And the ones that you've raised are the ones that are really at the top of the list. We do have a need to help our immigrants. We did provide money for excluded workers, and I'm hopeful we're going to be able to do it again this year. That health care, everyone should be able to access health care regardless of your status. And then in the mental health area, we do have to deal with not just people with disabilities, but people who are facing the mental challenges at this point. We've ignored people with co-occurring disorders, and we really have to deal with that issue. We also have to deal with those who can't protect themselves. Domestic violence victims are at the top of that list. Whether we're going to be providing money or other services, we have to do both, actually. I have a bill, for example, that would require that victims of domestic violence be notified when their abuser goes to get a gun license. Little simple things like that could make their life a little bit better, a little bit safer. But we do have to replace that money that is not coming. We cannot afford to see any of the agencies close or cut back on their services at a time when we need them more. So I want to thank all of you for being here today, giving us this opportunity to hear your concerns and to share our concerns with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Assembly Member Galef, you're up.
Okay, Jan, you mentioned how many nonprofits today? Actually, later on, you added a whole list.
Yes.
Yes.
Our membership is over 300, but there are a lot more in Westchester.
Right. And everybody's doing something important, and that makes it very, very hard for us. I'd like to kind of ditto a lot of what Gary had said. It's really hard. We have the largest budget ever in the state of New York. We do have some available monies, a little extra, that we may be able to allocate to different programs. I don't think we're going to be adding multiple billions of dollars to this budget. That's my view. I think I believe that the governor has said no new taxes. So being realistic is really a problem. I would ask if there's anything out there that you see in the budget that you don't think should be in the budget, you should let us know, because that may be another resource for some funding, or we can be advocating for your funding and not that funding. I know that's hard to do. And I don't think you as a group prioritize. If you could, that would also be helpful. I know that's difficult to do, but we have to prioritize. So we're going to do the best we can with the resources that we have. And usually at the end of the day, I think we do pretty well for you, all of you in some aspects, and we hope we'll be able to do that again. But even though we seem to have a lot of money, it may be a difficult year for providing all the services that we want.
So thank you, everyone, to our legislators. I do want to respond a little bit, or just put something out there. We are doing government mandated work. In New York, government workers doing the same jobs get paid significantly more than nonprofit employees. And that is a result of decades of systemic inequality. And so we know that this is a long battle that's not going to be solved this year. One-time fixes are not going to work for people who are taking care of our parents, our siblings, our spouses, and our children. I will once again reiterate really strongly that a budget is a reflection of community values. The nonprofit sector is constantly being pitted against each other to decide what the priorities are in a way that the business sector and other sectors would never be asked to do so. So we are here, we value our partnership, we elect you. We elect you because we have certain priorities. Again, we are going to fight for what our workforce deserves, because when we have a nonprofit workforce whose members are living in homeless shelters, that is unfair. And that is a budget that reflects bad values. We have to change. We have to stop being forced to compete with each other, and we have to stop being asked to do things that other professionals, other people, a workforce that is 80% women and over 50% people of color, we can't make the choices. Our legislators, those people we've elected, have to make the choices. So we encourage you to, we know it's baby steps. We know the budget is a big deal. I'm not an elected official because I don't want to make those choices. That's what we've elected you to do. We are going to come out firm and forceful over the next number of years for our workforce, because they deserve a lot more than they're getting, and so do the people they serve. And if the current trends continue, it's our workforce and the people they serve that are going to suffer. So with that, we thank you. Yes, we are doing God's work, but we are people who have families. We value our work. We are educated, and we are trained. And we, in addition to doing God's work, are doing professional work. And like every other sector, we should be compensated as such. And so thank you again. We are actually ready to call it a day 5 minutes early.